The giant alien ship appeared on Tuesday morning at exactly 9 o'clock. It came from nowhere, like a shadow falling across the earth. People around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. The ship was massive, bigger than any city, bigger than any mountain. It was black as night and shaped like a knife cutting through space. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started screaming. He was on the Earth Defense Station Aegis, floating. In space above the planet, the coffee cup fell from his hands as he ran to the bridge. His crew was already there, staring at the screens with wide eyes. "What do we have?" Morrison asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. Lieutenant Amy Parker turned from her computer. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and smart eyes. "Sir, it just appeared. No warning, no engine signatures. It's just there." Commander Roy Jackson was older, with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. He looked at the readings on his screen and shook his head. "Captain, this thing is 50 kilometers long. Our biggest ships are maybe 2 kilometers. This is like comparing a whale to a goldfish." Morrison walked to the main screen. The alien ship hung there like a black moon. It was perfectly still, not moving at all. No lights, no signals, nothing. Just waiting. "Any response to our communications?" Morrison asked. Amy shook her head. "We've tried everything, sir. Radio, laser signals, even old-fashioned Morse code. Nothing. It's like talking to a wall." Down on Earth, people were panicking. Traffic stopped as drivers pulled over to stare at the sky. Television news shows canceled their regular programs. The internet crashed from too many people trying to get information at the same time. President Linda Carter was in a meeting when her security chief burst through the door. He was breathing hard, his face white with fear. "Madam President, we have a situation. You need to see this." She followed him to the Situation Room, where dozens of people were working at computers and talking on phones. The main screen showed the alien ship from different angles. Satellites, telescopes, and space stations all pointed their cameras at the dark visitor. "How big is it?" she asked. 50 kilometers long, maybe 15 wide. "We estimate it weighs more than a small moon." President Carter sat down heavily in her chair. She had been president for 3 years, had dealt with wars and natural disasters, but nothing like this. "What do they want?" "We don't know. They're not talking." Across the world, other leaders were having similar conversations. In London Prime, Minister Susan Clark called emergency meetings. "Me?" In Beijing, Premier Liu Wei ordered the military to high alert. In Berlin, Chancellor Hans Weber tried to calm his people while preparing for the worst. Dr. Kevin Hayes was in his laboratory when the call came. He was a scientist who studied the possibility of alien life. For 30 years, he had wondered what would happen if aliens ever visited Earth. Now, he was about to find out. "Dr. Hayes, we need you at the Pentagon immediately," the voice on the phone said. "What's happening?" "Just turn on the news and get here as fast as you can." Kevin turned on his television and saw the alien ship. His coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. This was it. This was what he had been waiting for his whole life. Back on the Aegis station, Morrison and his crew continued to watch and wait. The alien ship had been there for 6 hours now, and still nothing happened.
"Sir?"
Amy said quietly. "What if they're studying us? What if they're deciding whether we're a threat?" Morrison nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe they're waiting for us to make the first move." Roy Jackson looked up from his weapons console. "Jake, our shields are up, but honestly, I don't think they'll do much good. If that thing wanted to destroy us, we'd already be space. Dust? Then why aren't we?" Good question. Hours passed slowly. Around the world, people watched the news, called their families, and wondered what would happen next. Some prayed. Some cried. Some got angry and demanded their governments do something. But the governments didn't know what to do either. Do you fight something that big? How do you negotiate with someone who won't talk? As the sun set over Earth, the alien ship remained perfectly still. It cast a shadow over half the planet, blocking out stars and making the night darker than usual. Morrison hadn't left the bridge in 12 hours. His crew brought him food, but he barely ate. Amy and Roy stayed with him, taking turns sleeping in their chairs. They all knew this was the most important day in human history, and they didn't want to miss anything. Captain Amy said around midnight, "I keep thinking about what my grandmother used to say. She lived through World War II, and she always told me that the scariest times were when nothing was happening, when everyone was just waiting." "Smart woman," Morrison replied. "What else did she say?" "She said that when bad things happen, people show who they really are. Some run away, some fight, and some just stand their ground and wait to see what happens." "Which one are you, Lieutenant?" Amy smiled, but it was a nervous smile, I guess. "We'll find out, sir." Dr. Kevin Hayes arrived at the Pentagon at 2 in the morning. He was tired from the long flight, but his mind was racing. The building was buzzing with activity. Soldiers, scientists, and politicians filled the hallways. "Dr. Hayes," a general called out, "we need your opinion on something." They led him to a room full of computers and screens. The alien ship was displayed from every angle possible. "We've been analyzing the design," the general explained. "It doesn't match anything in our databases. The materials, the construction, even the way it moves through space. It's completely alien." Kevin studied the images. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves and no visible joints or seams. "How advanced do you think they are?" someone asked. Kevin rubbed his tired eyes. "To build something like this, to appear in our solar system, without any warning, they're probably thousands of years ahead of us, maybe tens of thousands." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Back on the Aegis, Morrison was staring out the window at Earth below. The planet looked so small and fragile from up here. Cities sparkled like jewels, and the oceans reflected the light of the stars. It was beautiful and peaceful, and it was home. "Sir," Amy said suddenly, "I'm getting something." Morrison spun around. "What kind of something? A signal? It's coming from the ship?" The bridge went quiet. After 18 hours of silence, the aliens were finally ready to talk. "Put it on the main screen," Morrison ordered. The screen flickered, and then filled with symbols that seemed to move and shift. The symbols were unlike anything human, but somehow Morrison could understand them. They were translating themselves into English as he watched. Then came the voice. It was cold and mechanical, like a computer speaking. But it was speaking in perfect English, and every word was clear. "People of Earth, we are the hegemony. Your species has reached the threshold of galactic awareness. You will submit to our authority. You will surrender your weapons. You will accept our governance. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in extinction." The message, repeated 3 times, then stopped. The screen went dark. Morrison stood in the silence, his heart pounding. Around him, his crew stared at the blank screen in shock. "Well," Roy Jackson said finally, "I guess we know what they want." Amy's hand shook as she worked at her computer. "Sir, the message went to every electronic device on Earth, every radio, every television, every cell phone. Everyone heard it." Morrison nodded slowly. 72 hours. 3 days to decide the fate of humanity. "Lieutenant Parker," he said, "get me President Carter. Patch me through to every defense station in the system." "Just, sir." "What should I tell them?" "Oh." Morrison looked at the alien ship on the screen, then at his crew, then at the Earth below. "Tell them it's time to decide who we are." The United Nations building in New York had never seen anything like this. Representatives from every country on Earth sat in the main assembly hall. Some had flown across oceans to get there. Others had driven through the night. Everyone looked tired and scared. President Linda Carter sat at the main table with the other world leaders. Her phone had been ringing for 6 hours straight. Everyone wanted answers, but she didn't have any to give. "We need to make a decision," said Chancellor Hans Weber from Germany. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, and his gray hair was messy. "These aliens gave us 72 hours. We've already used up 18 of them." Premier Liu Wei from China leaned forward. He was a small man with careful eyes who always thought before he spoke. Perhaps we should consider what they're offering. They said governance, not destruction. Maybe they just want to rule us. Just want to rule us? President Carter's voice was sharp. Hanslu, we're talking about the end of human freedom. The end of democracy. It's the end of everything our people have fought for. Prime Minister Susan Clark from Britain nodded. Linda's right. If we surrender now, what happens to our children? What happens to their children? Do we want them to grow up as slaves? Dr. Kevin Hayes sat at a smaller table with other scientists and advisors. He had been studying the alien message for hours, breaking down every word, every tone, every pause. Excuse me, he said, raising his hand. The room went quiet. I've been analyzing their communication. I think they've done this. Before, President Carter turned to him. What do you mean? The way they spoke, the exact words they used. This wasn't a conversation. It was a script. They've given this same message to other planets, other species. The room buzzed with worried voices. Hans Weber held up his hand for quiet. Dr. Hayes, what happened to those other species?
It's Kevin?
Looked around the room at all the faces staring at him. I don't know, but I can tell you this much. They're very confident. They're not worried about our weapons or our military. They expect us to surrender. Maybe we should, said a voice from the back. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. This was Ambassador Carlos Mendez from Mexico. He was sweating despite the cool air in the room. Maybe fighting them would be suicide. And maybe surrendering would be worse than suicide, President Carter replied. Carlos, would you want to live on your knees? I'd want to live, he shot back. My country has 50 million children. I'd rather see them alive and ruled by aliens than dead and free. The argument that followed was loud and angry. Some leaders shouted about honor and freedom. Others talked about survival and protecting their people. The translators struggled to keep up as representatives switched between languages in their excitement. Meanwhile, on the space station, Aegis, Captain Morrison watched the Earth below. He could see the lights of cities, the movement of ships across, the oceans, the gentle curve of clouds around the planet. It all looked so peaceful from up here. Any word from the politicians? Commander Roy Jackson asked. Morrison shook his head. They're arguing. Been at it for hours. Lieutenant Amy Parker looked up from her computer screen. Sir, I've been monitoring communications worldwide. It's chaos down there. Some countries are mobilizing their militaries. Others are preparing surrender documents. Nobody can agree on anything. What about the regular people? What are they doing? Amy pulled up news feeds from around the world. Some are panicking. Lots of people are trying to leave the big cities, but others. ... She paused, pointing at images on her screen. Look at this. The screen showed crowds of people gathering in public squares. They weren't running or hiding. They were holding signs, singing songs, praying together. What do the signs say? Morrison asked. Amy zoomed in on one image. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, held a handmade sign that read, Earth is our home. Another image showed an elderly man with a sign that said, We choose freedom. Morrison felt something stir in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. Roy Jackson was studying his tactical displays. Jake, I've been running numbers. Even if every country worked together, even if we used every weapon we have, I don't think we could scratch that ship. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that we try. Back at the United Nations, the arguing continued. Dr. Hayes had been quiet for an hour, just listening and thinking. Finally, he stood up. May I say something? He asked. The room gradually fell silent. I've spent my whole career studying the possibility of alien contact. I've read every theory, every scenario, every plan we've ever made. But I never considered this one. Which one? President Carter asked. The one where they're not interested in destroying us or helping us. They just want us to join their empire. Like adding another province to their territory. Premier Liu Wei frowned. Is that necessarily bad? Think about it, Kevin said. They have technology that's thousands of years ahead of ours. They could have wiped us out instantly. They could have taken our planet without even talking to us. But they didn't. They gave us a choice. Some choice, muttered Chancellor Weber. Submit or die. Exactly, Kevin said. Why give us any choice at all? Why not just take what they want? The room was quiet as everyone thought about this.
Maybe?
Kevin continued. They need something from us. Maybe submission only works if it's freely given. President Carter leaned back in her chair. Maybe they're just being polite before they kill us all. On the other side of the world, in a military bunker in Russia, General Viktor Petrov was having his own meeting. His officers sat around a concrete table looking at maps and weapon inventories. Comrades, he said in Russian, I have been a soldier for 40 years. I have fought in wars, I have seen death, I have seen courage, but I have never seen anything like this. His aide, Colonel Anna Volkov, nodded. Sir, what are your orders? Prepare to fight, not because we can win, but because it is what we do. We are soldiers. When someone threatens our home, we defend it. Similar conversations were happening in military bases around the world. In the Pentagon, generals studied the alien ship and planned desperate attacks. In submarine bases, captains prepared their nuclear missiles. In Air Force command centers, pilots checked their fighters and bombers. Everyone knew the weapons wouldn't work, but they prepared anyway. Dr. Hayes left the United Nations building and walked through the streets of New York. It was 3 a.m, but the city was still alive. People filled the sidewalks, talking in small groups, looking up at the sky. He stopped at a coffee shop that was somehow still open. The owner, an older woman with kind eyes, poured him a cup without being asked. Scary times, she said. Yes, Kevin agreed. What will you do? She shrugged. Same thing I've always done. Make coffee, talk to people, try to help where I can. Else is there? Kevin smiled. You're not afraid? Of course I'm afraid, but fear never solved anything. My grandmother lived through the Great Depression, 2 wars, and more hard times than I can count. You know what she always said? What? She said you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you face it. Kevin drank his coffee and thought about that when he finished. He left money on the counter and walked back toward the UN building. Good luck, Doc, the coffee shop owner called after him. Good luck to all of us, he replied. Back in the assembly hall, the debate was finally winding down. 60 hours remained until the alien deadline. The world leaders looked exhausted, but they had to make a choice. President Carter stood up. We've talked about this for 12 hours. We've heard every argument. Now we need to vote. Vote on what? Exactly? Asked Prime Minister Clark. On whether humanity surrenders or fights. The room fell completely silent. This was it. The moment that would decide everything, Chancellor Weber cleared his throat. Before we vote, I want to say something. My country has experienced both war and peace, freedom and oppression. I know the cost of both. Whatever we decide today, we decide for all humanity, not just for ourselves, but for every child who will be born after this day. Premier Liu Wei nodded. Hans is right. This choice will echo through history forever. President Carter looked around the room at all the tired faces, all the worried eyes. Then let's make sure it's a choice we can live with.
Oh.
In favor of attempting negotiation and possible surrender? Hands went up around the room. Carter counted them carefully. All in favor of resistance? More hands went up. Carter counted. Again, then recounted to be sure. The room waited in absolute silence. The vote is tied, she announced. 24 for negotiation, 24 for resistance. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they couldn't decide. Then a voice came from the back of the room. It was Ambassador Mendez, the man who had argued for surrender earlier. Madame President, he said, I would like to change my vote. Everyone turned to look at him. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. I have been thinking about my children, about all our children. What kind of world do we leave them? What kind of example do we set? I vote for resistance. President Carter nodded solemnly. Then it's decided. We fight. The words hung in the air like a bell that had been rung. There was no taking them back. Now 50-8 hours remained until the alien deadline. Earth had made its choice. Now they had to live with it. The alien ship had been quiet for 2 days, hung above Earth like a black cloud, waiting. Inside the ship, machines that humans could not understand were making calculations. The aliens were preparing for what they thought would happen next. They had done this many times before. They would arrive at a planet, give the ultimatum, and wait. Most species surrendered within the first day. The smart ones realized they could not win and chose to live under alien rule rather than die fighting. But Earth was different. The aliens had never encountered a species quite like humans before. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aegis station, looking at the countdown timer on his screen. 12 hours and 37 minutes until the deadline. Around him, his crew worked quietly, checking weapons and running final system tests. Lieutenant Amy Parker had dark circles under her eyes. She had not slept in 36 hours. We're getting reports from all over the system. Mars Colony has armed their defense platforms. The asteroid mining stations are moving their ships into position. Even the research station near Jupiter is preparing to fight. Commander Roy Jackson looked up from his tactical display. Jake, I have to ask you something. What is it, Roy? Are we doing the right thing? That ship could turn our entire planet into dust in minutes. Maybe we should have tried to negotiate.
Oh.
Morrison had been asking himself the same question for hours.
Oh.
Roy, do you have children? 2 daughters? Lisa is 8 and Emma just turned 5. What kind of world do you want them to grow up in? Roy was quiet for a moment. A free one, and we're doing the right thing. Down on Earth. President Linda Carter was in the Situation Room under the White House. The room was full of generals, scientists, and advisors, all working frantically. Multiple screens showed the status of military forces around the world. Dr. Kevin Hayes sat at a computer terminal, still analyzing the alien ship. He had been studying every detail for 2 days, looking for any weakness, any advantage humanity might have. Madam President, he said, I think I've found something. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. The ship is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly predictable. Look at these scans. He pointed to his screen. Every system, every weapon, every engine operates in perfect harmony. There are no random variations, no individual quirks. It's like the whole ship thinks with one mind. What does that mean? President Carter asked. It means they've never had to deal with chaos. Every species they've conquered probably fought in organized formations, with coordinated strategies. Following military doctrine, but humans. Kevin smiled. For the first time in days, humans don't always follow the rules. General Patricia Stone, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. Dr. Hayes, are you suggesting we fight dirty? I'm suggesting we fight human. At the same time, in a small apartment in Tokyo, a young programmer named Kenji Tanaka was doing something that would change everything. He had been working for 24 hours straight, writing code on his laptop. Kenji was not a soldier or a politician. He was just a 23-year-old college student who loved computers and science fiction movies. But he had an idea. If their systems are as advanced as they seem, he muttered to himself in Japanese, they probably have automatic defenses against our weapons. But what if we don't attack their weapons? What if we attack their expectations? He finished typing and hit the enter key. Around the world, every computer connected to the internet received a small program. The program was simple. It would activate in exactly 12 hours. At the moment of the alien deadline, Captain Morrison was reviewing the final battle plans when his communication system beeped. It was a direct message from President Carter. Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Yes, Madam President. We have any chance at all of winning this fight? Morrison looked around his bridge at Amy and Roy and the rest of his crew. They were good people, brave people, but they were about to face an enemy that could destroy planets. No, Madam President, we don't have a chance of winning. Then why are we doing this? Morrison thought about his answer carefully, because sometimes winning isn't the point. Sometimes you fight because it's the right thing to do, even if you know you'll lose. And sometimes, when you refuse to give up, something unexpected happens. What do you mean? I mean that in 30 years of military service, I've learned that the enemy's plans only work if you do what they expect you to do. The moment you do something they don't expect, everything changes. President Carter was quiet for a moment. Jake, I'm about to give you an order that might be considered insane. I'm listening. I want you to open a communication channel to that alien ship. I want you to tell them our answer. Morrison felt his heart start beating faster. Are you sure? Once we answer, there's no going back.
I'm sure.
But Jake, the answer has to come from you, not from me. It has to come from a soldier, from someone who understands what we're really choosing. Morrison looked at Amy, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at Roy, who gave him a thumbs up. Around the bridge, his entire crew was watching him. Amy opened a channel to the alien ship, full spectrum broadcast. Amy's fingers flew over her keyboard. Channel open, sir. They're receiving. Morrison took a deep breath. This was it. It's a moment that would define humanity's future. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Station Aegis, speaking for humanity. The words echoed through space, but more importantly, they echoed to every human settlement in the solar system. Every person on Earth, Mars, and the space. Stations between could hear what he was about to say. We have received your ultimatum. We have considered your demands. We have debated our response for 2 days, and our answer is simple. The alien ship remained motionless, waiting. Our answer is no. The word hung in space like a bell that had been struck. 3 letters that carried the weight of an entire species' defiance. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In underground bunkers, soldiers checked their weapons one last time. In hospitals, doctors prepared for the worst. In schools that had become shelters, teachers held children close and tried not to show their fear. But something else was happening too. In living rooms and offices, in cars and trains, in places where people had gathered to hear humanity's answer. Something unexpected occurred. People started cheering. It started small. A few voices here and there, scattered across the globe, but it grew. In New York, crowds in the streets began to chant. In London, people poured out of buildings and into the squares. In Tokyo, Kenji Tanaka looked up from his computer and smiled. The word no was spreading like wildfire. Not just the word itself, but what it meant. Humanity had looked at an impossible enemy and refused to surrender. Back on the Aegis, Morrison continued his message to the aliens. You offered us a choice between submission and extinction. But you made a mistake. You assumed those were the only 2 options. You didn't consider a third possibility. Amy was monitoring the alien ship's response. Sir, their power systems are fluctuating. I think we surprised them. Morrison smiled grimly. Good. Let's surprise them some more. He opened the channel again. You see, you don't understand humans very well. We're not like other species. We don't make logical decisions. We don't always do what's smart or safe or reasonable. Sometimes we do things just because someone told us we couldn't. The alien ship's weapons began to power up. Energy readings spiked across all sensors. Roy Jackson looked at his tactical display. Jake, they're charging their main guns. I see it. Morrison continued his broadcast. You want to know what makes humans different? We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've had world wars, civil wars, revolutions, and rebellions. We know how to fight enemies that are bigger and stronger than we are. We know how to fight when we're outnumbered and outgunned. The alien weapons reached full power. The ship's hull began to glow with deadly energy. But most importantly, Morrison said, we know how to fight when everyone expects us to lose. Amy's console erupted in alarms. Sir, they're targeting major population centers. London, New York, Beijing, Moscow. They're about to fire. Morrison looked at the countdown timer. 5 minutes until the deadline. All stations. This is Morrison. They're about to show us what they can do. It's time to show them what we can do. Around the world, every military base, every ship, every weapon platform prepared for action. But this wasn't going to be a conventional battle. This was going to be something the aliens had never seen before. Because humans, as Morrison had said, don't always follow the rules. In his apartment in Tokyo, Kenji Tanaka watched his countdown timer reach 0. Around the world, millions of computers activated as programs simultaneously. The program was simple, but effective. It sent a single message to every electronic device on Earth. The message was one word: no. But it sent that word 1 billion times. From every computer, every phone, every electronic device humanity had ever built. The message flooded every communication frequency, every radio band, every possible channel. It was electronic chaos. The digital equivalent of every human on Earth shouting no at the same time. The alien ship's sensors, designed to process orderly communications, were overwhelmed. For the first time in 1,000 years, the aliens experienced something they had never felt before: kung fu. The alien ship fired first. Beams of pure energy shot down from space like lightning from an angry god. The beams were aimed at the biggest cities on Earth. It's meant to show humanity what happened when someone said no to the hegemony. But something went wrong. The first beam aimed at London hit empty air. The city was still there, but the beam missed by 50 kilometers and struck the ocean instead. Water turned to steam in a massive cloud that could be seen from space. The second beam aimed at New York also missed. It hit a mountain in Canada, turning solid rock into molten glass. Captain Morrison watched from the Aegis station as beam after beam fired from the alien ship. Some came close to their targets, others missed by hundreds of kilometers. The aliens were supposed to be perfect, but they were shooting like beginners. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Amy Parker asked, staring at her screens in amazement. Commander Roy Jackson was grinning despite the danger. "Jake, their targeting systems are completely confused. That electronic storm from the kid in Tokyo must have scrambled their sensors." Morrison nodded. "Good. Now, let's see if the rest of the plan works." Around Earth, every military force was moving at once, but they weren't moving together. They weren't following any central plan. Each group was doing something completely different. Nuclear submarines launched missiles, but not at the alien ship. They fired their weapons at random points in space, creating clouds of debris and electromagnetic interference. Fighter jets took off from air bases around the world. Some flew in formation, others flew alone. Some headed toward the alien ship. Others flew in circles or figure eights or patterns that made no sense at all. The space-based weapon platforms started firing, not in coordination. Some shot at the alien ship, others shot at asteroids. A few shot at nothing at all, just adding to the chaos in space around Earth. On the surface, ground-based missile batteries launched everything they had. Some missiles headed for the alien ship, others flew toward the moon. A few were programmed to explode in random locations, creating more confusion. To human observers, it looked like complete madness. To the aliens, it was impossible to understand. The alien ship had fought thousands of battles. Its computers knew how to handle organized resistance. They could predict where coordinated forces would move, what tactics they would use, how they would respond to counterattacks. But humans weren't being organized. They were being human. Dr. Kevin Hayes watched the battle from the Pentagon's Situation Room. On the screens around him, he could see the chaos unfolding in space. Missiles flew in every direction. Ships moved in patterns that defied military logic. Electronic signals filled every frequency. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. General Patricia Stone looked at him like he was crazy. "Dr. Hayes, we're losing ships. Our missiles aren't even scratching their hull. How is this beautiful?" Kevin pointed at one of the screens. "Look at there. Response time. When we first started shooting, they were intercepting 90% of our missiles. Now it's down to 60%. Your systems are getting overwhelmed, but they're still winning. Are they? Look closer." On the main screen, the alien ship was moving for the first time since it arrived. It was turning, trying to track multiple targets at once. Its weapon systems were firing constantly, but the beams were becoming less accurate with each shot. Meanwhile, in a submarine somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, Captain Maria Santos was following orders that made no sense to her. She had been told to fire all her nuclear missiles, but not at the alien ship. Instead, She was supposed to aim them at a point in space where nothing existed. "Captain," her weapons officer said, "are you sure about these coordinates?" "There's nothing there, I'm sure, Lieutenant." "Fire all tubes." The missiles launched from the submarine and streaked toward their target. When they reached the empty space, they exploded in a series of nuclear fireballs. The explosions served no obvious purpose except to create more light and heat and radiation in the area around Earth. But that was exactly the point, back on the Aegis.
Oh.
Morrison was coordinating with similar operations around the globe. Nuclear. Explosions bloomed in space like deadly flowers. Some were close to the alien ship, others were far away. All of them added to the confusion. Sir Amy reported, "The alien ship is changing its behavior. It's trying to establish some kind of defensive perimeter, but our random attacks are making it impossible." Roy Jackson was studying his tactical display with growing excitement. "Jake, I think we're actually bothering them. Their energy output is increasing, but their accuracy is decreasing. It's like they're getting frustrated." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Frustrated enemies make mistakes." The battle continued for 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. Human forces attacked from every direction with no coordination and no apparent strategy. Some attacks were serious attempts to damage the alien ship, others were pure distraction. Many were somewhere in between. The aliens had never experienced anything like it. In every previous conquest, enemy forces had followed predictable patterns. They grouped together for mutual defense. They focused their attacks on the strongest points. They tried to protect their most important assets. Humans did none of these things. They spread out when they should have grouped together. They attacked the alien ship's strongest shields while ignoring obvious weak points. They sacrificed valuable ships to protect worthless asteroids. To the alien computers, human tactics made no sense. But that was exactly why they were working. In Tokyo, Kenji Tanaka was still at his computer watching the news coverage of the battle. His electronic interference program was still running, sending billions of no messages every second. But he had another idea. He started typing rapidly, creating a new program. This one was different. Instead of sending the same message over and over, it would send random messages. Random numbers, random letters, random symbols. Pure digital noise. Within minutes, every computer on Earth was broadcasting chaos into space. Radio telescopes meant. For scientific research, were sending random signals. Communication satellites were transmitting gibberish. Even cell phones were adding their small voices to the electronic storm. The alien ship's sensors, designed to process organized information, began to fail under the assault of pure randomness. Morrison watched as the alien ship's movements became more erratic. Its weapons fire was now missing more often than it hit. Several of its energy beams had actually struck its own defensive fields by mistake. "Amy, what's their power status? Still at maximum output, sir? But their efficiency is dropping. I think their systems are overheating from trying to process all the random data. How long can they maintain this?" "Unknown, sir? But they're definitely working harder than they planned to." Roy Jackson looked up from his display with a puzzled expression. "Jake, something strange is happening. They just recalled all their fighter craft." Morrison frowned. "Recalled them? Why?" I think... I think they're confused. They don't know how to fight us because we're not fighting them the way we're supposed to." At that moment, something unprecedented happened. The alien ship stopped firing. For the first time in 20 minutes, space around Earth went quiet. Human ships continued their chaotic movements, but the alien weapons had gone silent. Morrison opened a communication channel. "All units, maintain current operations, but hold fire until further notice." Amy was working frantically at her console. "I'm detecting something strange from the alien ship. They're sending out some kind of scanning beam." "Scanning for what, I think?" "I think they're trying to figure out what we're doing." On Earth, people who had been hiding in shelters began to emerge. The alien attacks had stopped. Some cities had been damaged by the missed shots, but most of the planet was intact. More importantly, humanity was still fighting. In the Pentagon, General Stone was reviewing the battle reports. Dr. Hayes, I have to admit, your chaos strategy seems to be working. But what happens now? Kevin was staring at the main screen, where the alien ship hung motionless above Earth. Now we find out if they're as smart as we think they are. What do you mean? I mean, they came here expecting an easy victory? They thought we'd either surrender immediately or put up organized resistance that they could easily crush? Instead, we gave them something they've never encountered before, which is, Kevin smiled, a fight they can't understand. The alien ship remained silent for another 5 minutes. During that time, human forces continued their random, chaotic operations. Missiles flew in impossible patterns. Ships moved without apparent purpose. Electronic signals filled space with noise. Then, suddenly, a new voice came over the communication channels. It was different from the cold, mechanical voice that had delivered the ultimatum. This voice sounded almost ... uncertain. Human forces, the voice said. Your tactics are ... unusual. We require clarification of your strategic objectives. Morrison looked at Amy and Roy, then opened his own communication channel. Strategic objectives, he said. Our strategic objective is simple. We're human. This is what we do. The alien ship was quiet for a long moment. Then the voice came back, and this time, it definitely sounded confused. Please explain. Your current operations serve no logical military purpose. Morrison grinned. Exactly. The battle for Earth had taken an unexpected turn. For the first time in their history, the aliens were asking. The alien ship hung in space like a giant question mark. For 3 hours, it had not fired a single weapon, massive vessel that had terrified. Earth, with its ultimatum, was now asking humans to explain themselves. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aegis station, trying not to smile. In 30 years of military service, he had never been in a situation quite like this. The enemy had stopped fighting and was asking for a conversation. Sir Lieutenant Amy Parker said, "We're receiving another transmission from the alien ship." It threw. The voice that came over the speakers was different again. It's less mechanical than before, almost curious. Human Commander Morrison, we have analyzed your combat operations for the past 3 hours. Your tactics do not match any known military doctrine in our database. Morrison looked at Commander Roy Jackson, who was grinning like a kid who had just won a game. Morrison said into the microphone. Maybe that's because we're not in your database. Explain. Morrison thought for a moment. How do you explain humanity to aliens who had conquered 1,000 worlds? How do you describe? What makes humans different? You said you're called the hegemony, right? How many species have you conquered? There was a pause. 1,047 civilizations have joined the hegemony. And how many of them fought back? Approximately 30% offered military resistance. Let me guess. They all fought the same way. Organized formations, coordinated attacks, logical strategies. Another pause. That is correct. Morrison smiled. Well, congratulations. You just met your first humans. Down on Earth, people were glued to their televisions and radios, listening to the conversation between their species and an alien empire. In the United Nations building, President Linda Carter and the other world leaders were following every word. Dr. Kevin Hayes was taking notes furiously. This was the first real conversation between humans and aliens in history. I know he didn't want to miss anything. The alien voice came back, and now it definitely sounded confused. Human Morrison, your species employed what can only be described as organized chaos. This does not appear in any tactical manual. That's because we wrote our own manual, Morrison replied. And the first rule is, when someone expects you to do one thing, do something else instead. This is ... inefficient. It's maybe, but it's also unpredictable, and unpredictable is dangerous. Roy Jackson was monitoring the alien ship's power levels. Jake, something's happening. Their weapon systems are still offline, but they're redirecting power to their communication arrays. Amy looked up from her console. Sir, I think they're talking to someone else. Long-range communication, heading out toward deep space. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. They're calling for backup. But the alien voice surprised him. Human Morrison, We are not requesting reinforcements. We are requesting ... guidance. Guidance. In 1,000 years of expansion, the hegemony has never encountered a situation like this. Our standard protocols have failed. You're consulting with our central command regarding how to proceed. President Carter's voice came over Morrison's private communication channel. Jake, did they just say they don't know what to do with us? I think they did, Madam President. Dr. Hayes was practically bouncing in his chair. Captain Morrison, ask them about their other conquests. Ask them what usually happens. Hey, Morrison opened the channel again. Hegemony ship. Can you tell us about the other species you've conquered? What did they do when you gave them the ultimatum? Most submitted immediately upon seeing our technological superiority. Those that resisted did so with conventional military tactics. When their organized resistance failed, they surrendered to avoid total destruction. And then what happened to them? They were integrated into the hegemony. They were given roles suited to their abilities. They lived under our governance but were allowed to maintain their basic cultural identities. Morrison exchanged glances with his crew, so they became part of your empire, but they kept being themselves, essentially correct. Amy was monitoring. Global communications. Sir, people all over Earth are hearing this. The aliens aren't talking about slavery or genocide. They're talking about a job, the alien voice continued. However, your species presents a unique challenge. Integration into the hegemony requires a certain level of ... predictability. Your combat operations suggest this may not be possible. With humans, Morrison couldn't help but laugh. You saying we're too chaotic to conquer? That is, accurate assessment. In his apartment in Tokyo, Kenji Tanaka was still running his random signal generator, filling space with electronic noise. But now he was also recording everything. His conversation would be studied by humans for centuries. The alien ship was quiet for several minutes. When the voice returned, it sounded different again. Less certain, more thoughtful. Human Morrison. We have received guidance from our central command. They have proposed a solution that has never been offered before. Morrison felt his heart start beating faster. We're listening. The hegemony operates on principles of efficiency and order. Each member species contributes according to their strengths. Warriors, scientists, builders, administrators, each has a role. Okay. Your species has demonstrated a capability that no other member of the hegemony possesses. The ability to create effective chaos, to fight in ways that cannot be predicted or countered. Roy Jackson frowned. Where is this going? The alien voice continued. There are occasionally member species within the hegemony that prove difficult to integrate. Species that resist our governance even after joining. Species that cause problems for the greater order. Morrison began to understand, and you want us to deal with them. The hegemony offers humanity a unique position. You would maintain complete autonomy over your world and your colonies. You would govern yourselves according to your own laws and customs. In exchange, you would serve as our enforcement division for problematic member species. The Aegis went completely silent. Morrison looked at Amy, then at Roy, then at the screen showing Earth below. You're offering us a job as galactic troubleshooters. That is ... a colorful but accurate description. President Carter's voice came over the communication channel. Jake, they're not asking us to surrender. They're asking us to join them as equals. Dr. Hayes was laughing in the background. Don't you see? We're too chaotic to rule over, but too useful to destroy. We've carved out a third option that didn't exist before. Morrison opened the channel to the alien ship, a Gemini vessel. I need to ask you something. What happens if we say no to this offer? Then you would remain outside the hegemony. Your world would be marked as a restricted zone. No member species would be permitted to contact or interfere with your development. And if we say yes, then you would become the first autonomous member of the hegemony. You would have access to our knowledge, our technology, our trade networks, but you would remain human. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew that had helped humanity take its first step into the galaxy. Can we have some time to think about it? Of course. There is no deadline for this decision. After the alien communication ended, Morrison opened a channel to Earth. President Carter, what do you think? I think we just won something that no one has ever won before, she replied. The right to be ourselves. Act. Dr. Hayes was still analyzing the conversation. Captain, do you realize what just happened? We said no to an empire that has never been told no before. Instead of destroying us, they offered us a partnership. Because we're too stubborn to rule, Morrison said. Exactly, we've proven that. Humanity's greatest weakness is also our greatest strength. We don't follow rules. We don't act logically. We don't do what we're supposed to do. Amy was monitoring communications from around the world. Sir, the response from Earth is overwhelming. People are celebrating. They're saying we did it. We stayed human. Morrison thought about the past few days. Fear, the arguments, the impossible decision, the chaotic battle. And now this an offer to join the galaxy as partners instead of subjects. Amy, open a channel to the alien ship. Channel open, sir. Hegemony vessel. This is Captain Morrison. I can't speak for all of humanity, but I can tell you what I think our answer will be. We are listening. Morrison smiled, thinking about the coffee shop owner in New York who had said, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you face it. I think we're going to tell you the same thing we told you 3 days ago, which is, no, we're not joining your empire. We're not becoming your enforcement division. We're not following your rules or accepting your governance. The alien ship was quiet for a long moment. However, Morrison continued, we might be interested in working with you as equals, as partners, as allies. When our interests align, that was not one of the options we presented, Morrison laughed. Welcome to dealing with humans. We don't stick to the options you give us. We make our own options. Another long pause. This is ... acceptable. The hegemony recognizes humanity as an independent species with autonomous status. We will establish formal diplomatic relations, and if other species cause problems for your empire, we may request your assistance. Partners, we'll consider it. Case by case. No promises. Understood. Morrison looked out at the stars, thinking about the future. Humanity had faced the impossible and found a way to R.